Our scripture lesson today comes from 1 John chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. This is how we know love. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. But if a person has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, and that person doesn't care, how can the love of God remain in him?
Have you ever noticed that if someone seems to have an abundance, perhaps they don't know when enough is enough, and so sometimes people join in and they tell them when they think that they have enough. I have enough weight. I have had so many people through the years tell me that enough is enough and that I should consider being generous with the weight. I have been around people who've been collectors and hoarders, and if you've read the outreach article, you'll know that my mother was a collector. And so many of family members and friends would come in and say to her, "You've collected enough," which her reaction and my reaction both is, when someone tells me, maybe you should consider sharing a little and losing weight, I want to eat more. When people would say that to my mother, can you guess what she would do? She would go out and buy more. So I'm not going to tell you on this Sunday when is enough enough. I'm not going to tell you that you have enough and you should be. The last thing someone needs to hear is shame. The last thing they need to feel is guilt, because it defeats the purpose. It does no good for anyone to stand there pointing a finger and saying, "You have enough." And so, we have enough when we make that decision for ourselves. A decision like the young CEO did in Seattle just a few weeks ago. Have you all read about him? If someone had gone up to him and had told him, "You have enough money," because he was approaching $100,000 in his own he was approaching $1 million income. If someone had told him, "You have enough," he probably wouldn't have chosen to do this. He read the same report that I read a few years ago from Princeton University. And it was done a study in 2010 that found that there is a correlation between income and happiness. That the more money a person makes, the happier they seem to be until they reach $70,000. And then when they reach an income level of $70,000, don't you hope that some of you that you'll get the chance to try this out? When they reach an income level of $70,000, there's no longer a correlation. So as soon as you hit $70,000, it's like the law of diminishing returns. No matter how much more you earn, no matter how much harder you work to earn more money, you're not going to get happier. And so he chose then to lower his own income and to increase the income of all of his employees to $70,000. That is incredible. Imagine if every CEO chose to do that. But again, if we turn to every CEO and say, "You should do this," we know that it's not going to happen. When do we have enough individually? When we know that we have enough. Philippians 4, the Apostle Paul didn't need 70,000. And the other thing that came to my mind when I read that study was, I saw very happy people when I was down in Honduras on a mission trip who were living on $300 a year. That this is such a situation for our culture. It is an American thing to have happiness tied so closely to money. The Apostle Paul said, "I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." Being content, having the knowledge that enough is enough in whatever situation. Well, the question then becomes, when do we have enough to share? Generosity is about who we are, not what we have. So, have any of you seen online just in the last week? This happened in a United Methodist Church, I think on the East Coast, and it's made the rounds. It has gone viral, where a homeless person gave a donation to the church in the offering plate. And it was 18 cents. And they wrote on the offering envelope, "Please don't be angry. I'm homeless. This is all I have." And so they counted the money afterward, after the service like we do and everything. And the minister saw it, and now he's wanting that person to come forward because they would lavish that person with so much more. And I'm thinking, that's not the reason the person gave that money. And why does the person need to go forward? Why don't they just go out their doors and start helping the people out there, and surely they'll reach that person someday. But it reminded me of something that I received in an offering plate, and it was in 2013. And it was from a woman whom I'd never seen before. And she came to church that morning in Idaho Falls, and she took one of the envelopes that we had in our pews, and she was obviously, well, she had announced in the prayer concern, she said, "Well, will you please pray for me because I'm homeless. I'm passing through. I need to find a place to land." And she was obviously United Methodist somewhere before this because she gave a gift. And on this envelope, she put $1 apportionment to go for apportionments. Isn't that amazing? For those of you who are United Methodist and have been a United Methodist in a long time, and you know what an apportionment is, not even some of our long-term members put apportionment as their designation. And she put, "My gold dollar." Isn't that cool? It was all she had that day, and she put it in the offering plate. I exchanged it for another one because I've kept this, because it's humbling, isn't it? Humbling when you realize that generosity is not tied to what we have. Generosity is who we are. The Prophet Muhammad, in every religion, there's this idea. But the Prophet Muhammad said, giving to charity will never make you poor. Is that what we believe too? Giving to charity will never make you poor. I was going to ask you, but we're running short on time, how do you feel when you give? But I don't think I need to ask you that, really, because we've heard from Will. You've changed your life, haven't you? As you've become more of a generous person, it's part of your soul. It becomes ingrained in you so that you change as you give. Sometimes I've heard people in the church, young people especially, just starting out saying, "I have nothing to give. I am so in debt. I have so much. I have to take care of my family. I have nothing to give." And for the longest time, I bought into it. And I would say, that's okay. All of us sometimes are in the position where we're the ones receiving. And there will come a time when you'll be able to give. What was I talking about? It may not be money that people can give, but there's always a way to be generous, because it's who we are, not what we have. And amen? So go now in the love of our God. We will live for others through our God. Go now in the grace of Jesus. We will forgive others just as we have been forgiven. Go now in the community of the Spirit. We will serve others in every need, in every place, in every heart. Go in peace, and amen.